Roger.
Well, I didn't sign up for this, but it looks like I'm now part of the Ghost Patrol.
I'm here to conquer fear and fall like a sword. I run into the heat of day, like a knife. I fight until the fight is won. In the rage, I save each and every one till this war is won.
With the release of Battlefield 1, it seems like EA will finally be able to say that it overtook Call of Duty in this cycle. And that hasn't always been the case. Battlefield 2 Modern Combat was released around the time of Call of Duty 3, Bad Company 2 was released alongside Black Ops 1, and today's game, Battlefield 3, was released at the same time as Modern Warfare 3. Or as it's more truthfully known, the largest advertisement for the Frostbite engine ever made. It's understandable that EA and DICE would want to show off their destruction engine because when you break it down, it's the only objective advantage it has over Call of Duty. Sure, the multiplayer gives a different feel and the shooting is characterized differently. You get a wholly different experience on either platform, but the way you do that is by having better set pieces, not slapping together a game under a year and cutting all the development staff down to the people creating explosions. It's quite ironic that EA wanted to put more of the focus on the action movie style visuals by having all these buildings topple over and earthquakes, when the impact is the same as catastrophizing that roadmap child's rug from the 90s to try and compete with Call of Duty. I would rather go back to Modern Warfare 3 and replay the overblown sledgehammer-built World War III shit again than anything in Borefield 3, and that was hands down the worst part of the trilogy's end. Battlefield 3 was the most overblown, spectacle-driven game DICE has ever made, yet it's still incredibly dull because almost nothing happens in it. EA tried to get into the market by doing a Modern Warfare-esque type story about a guy named Blackburn, who I can only remember the name of because it's on his uniform, arguing with two idiots about something that happened off screen that we never get to see. And if this scene looks familiar, don't worry, because unlike Black Ops, that had a mystery plot to justify the constant flashbacks, in Battlefield 3, we're never told why we should care about what Blackburn's talking about. So this ends up being as moronic a framing device as the one at Black Ops DS. Blunderfield 3 is the game that EA probably marketed as this insanely fast military thriller, and that Blackburn was this persecuted guy who was a loose cannon for all the right reasons, and the trend of pre-rendered trailer dumbassery makes sense for Battlefield 3 because that was its whole selling point, the cinematic plot. And it's not surprising that it backfired for BF3, because it's all well and good to get that first QTE-fueled section of badassery at the start, but the problem comes from the fact that the actual game will eventually need to happen at some point, and then you end up just playing a normal game as you'd expect. In order for DICE to make the Quantum of Solace-esque shitty action movie comparison as obvious as possible, the game starts with a pointless flash forward at the start just to get some action on screen rather than have interesting things happen like Black Ops did the year before. You get to shoot about 12 guys, jump around on a train for a minute, and then immediately get dumped into the Dullard's interrogation room with no rhyme or reason between events. Sure, EA and DICE will say they tried with this game that had less than a year's development time to have something fun happen, but when you break it down, this game is a glorified tech demo for the Frostbite engine. It's blatant when you have sections like the jet fighting vehicle section, where you get treated to completely unbroken, masturbation-worthy shots of military porn. And I'm not kidding, just sit back, jerk one off, and you'll still have another 30 seconds before anything happens. And then that just happens to be cursor pointing challenges. The combat in this section is so carbon copied and simple to control that they could have hooked up a Drinking Bird level automaton to this plane and gotten the same result. It's funny that there's no possible way to die in this section unless you put the controller down to throw the TV out the window from 3 stories because the combat was put together by someone slapping a keyboard with a shoe for 14 hours. In order for DICE's developers to think like they're doing something unique, they decided to cut the standard FPS's health bar in half for this game, and because the AI for the enemies are stolen from Gap mannequins, when you walk into a room without giving your allies a 100-meter head start, they will all target you and take you down inside of 4 seconds. The only real thing you have going for you in firefights is that somehow the regenerating health ends up being faster than that. Battlefield, for the love of God, stop giving your enemies mile-long accuracy. It is stupid and irritating. And to talk about irritating, we've only got one thing left for this game, and that's how DICE decided to end it. After everything I've talked about so far, it was only inevitable that DICE would have tried saving its game from the well by tying up everything satisfactorily with a good ending, but only succeeded in getting itself trapped alongside 12 children all named Timmy. At the end, we finally figure out the reason why Blackburn is being interrogated was because after they investigated the Paris bombing, the cops think that Dima, a Russian soldier and friend of Blackburn's, perpetrated it and are protecting the guy who actually did it, Solomon, because he was apparently a CIA insider who was outside scrutiny on this because these two morons have never copped for a living, which allowed Blackburn and his asshole friend the ability to be left alone in their interrogation room to formulate the plan to escape, which was basically to bash the two cops over the head with whatever they could find in the room. Blackburn escapes and 2 seconds later jumps onto the train containing Solomon's nuke that he just knew was there because reasons and surprise Dr. House skills. He gets to Solomon, beats him up, finds the nuke, and then the game just smash cuts to what they would assumingly be the credits. No! The game smash cuts and then decides to have a scene of some twat burger I've never seen before writing a suicide note to escape from some off-screen threat we never see. I was so mind-boggled by this bargain basement cop-out retarded beyond the means of reality ending that I decided to recap it in full because in this plotline where the only established things it has are surface details that were examined for all of 5 seconds, how in the fuck did DICE just decide to toss all the plot threads into the ceiling like a petulant 7-year-old playing Scrabble with his English professor mother? If Assassin's Creed Unity is the poster child for why games shouldn't be released on a yearly basis, Battlefield 3 is the cheap off-brand version of it because this game is so slapdashedly put together that it ended up just dumping a bucket of cliches onto the design document and called it a day. And they put the shooting and combat together by putting 3 keyboards in a room with a walrus. Does that analogy make sense? Absolutely not. But apparently releasing a game like this did, and EA expected it to be a huge hit. Yet, everything this game is and does is so spectacularly awful that DICE should be glad that N-Space exists, since those are the only guys who managed to do worse. I really, really hope that you got your money's worth on advertising your destruction engine, DICE, an engine that was somehow better implemented using the previous version from a game 3 years its senior. Well, that's all I got for this week's visit to the fuck barrel. I'll see you next time after I give y'all a victory for gamers and the final scoreboard. Ha! I switched it up on you guys, just for kicks.